The African savanna is often romanticized as a beautiful, balanced Eden of golden grasses and majestic predators, but underneath this superficial landscape lies a brutal, hyperdynamic combat zone driven by the laws of caloric survival and massive ecological migration. While apex predators like lions, leopards, and hyenas command human attention as the primary engines of destruction, the true biological core of this entire ecosystem is a massive, relentless mammalian engine known as a wildebeest, or carnicetes. To the casual observer viewing nature documentaries or driving through national parks, the wildebeest is often dismissed as a clumsy, mismatched creature, an evolutionary afterthought built from the leftover parts of an antelope, an ox, and a horse. This superficial assessment completely fails to grasp the reality of a hyper-specialized, endurance-driven migratory platform engineered to conquer thousands of miles of hostile terrain, survive structural starvation, and out-multiply the most efficient killing machines on the planet. The wildebeest is a living testament to collective kinetic momentum, a species whose entire biological blueprint is designed to transform individual vulnerability into an absolute, unstoppable wave of continental movement. To understand the tactical supremacy of the wildebeest, one must first deconstruct the deep mechanical layout of its skeletal frame, which reveals an evolutionary commitment to long-distance locomotive efficiency over raw, short-range explosive speed. Unlike territorial antelopes that rely on dense, spring-like muscle groups to bounce erratic paths through thick bush, the wildebeest features an amplified thoracic cavity, high shoulder humps, and a sloped pelvic angle designed for endless, energy-conserving trotting. Their elongated, thin leg bones are bound by thick, high-tensile tendons that act like mechanical energy recovery systems, absorbing the shock of every stride and snapping back to propel the animal forward with minimal caloric expenditure. This structural engineering allows a wildebeest to maintain a steady, high-speed pace across sun-baked clay and rocky escarpments for days on end, outlasting the endurance limits of nearly every predator that attempts to pursue them, effectively turning the vast open landscape into a tactical playground where distance itself becomes a shield against annihilation. This biomechanical design is paired with an incredibly advanced, specialized digestive matrix engineered to exploit the lowest-grade vegetative fuels available on the plains. The wildebeest features an exceptionally wide, square muzzle and a highly flexible, muscular lip structure that allows it to act as an automated lawnmower, rapidly stripping away short, nutrient-rich grasses that other selective grazers cannot even reach. Their massive, multi-chambered stomach relies on a hyperdense microbial fermentation grid that breaks down tough cellulose and extracts every single micromolecule of moisture and protein within hours. Because they operate as part of a massive herd numbering in the hundreds of thousands, they cannot afford to settle or selectively forage. They must process massive volumes of grass at light speed, consuming up to 10 pounds of vegetation daily, leaving behind a highly fertilized, trampled landscape that resets the botanical cycle of the savanna and forces a herd to maintain a state of permanent, restless kinetic momentum. This internal drive is reinforced by a highly specialized sensory array designed to maintain total operational awareness in environments choked by dust, heat distortion, and predatory ambush. While their horizontal, wide-set eyes provide a near 360-degree view of the horizon even while their heads are lowered to graze, the wildebeest relies heavily on a highly sophisticated olfactory and acoustic detection grid. Their nasal passages are lined with an enlarged surface area of sensory membranes capable of detecting the microscopic scent particles of moisture and ozone carried by the wind from over 50 miles away. As rain falls on distant plains, the wildebeest reads these chemical signals in real time, mapping precise location of upcoming green pastures across the horizon, allowing the herd to navigate blind through unfamiliar territories with an absolute geographical certainty that dictates their survival vector. Yet, all of this sensory perfection and locomotive efficiency will be completely neutralized if the wildebeest's respiratory and thermal regulation systems could not handle the suffocating, high-temperature chaos of a stampeding herd. When tens of thousands of heavy animals panic and launch into a full-speed run, the ambient temperature rises rapidly, and the air becomes a thick cloud of choking soil particles. To survive this self-induced hazard, the wildebeest employs an advanced cranial cooling system known as a carotid rete. Blood traveling toward the brain passes through a complex network of tiny vessels wrapped around the nasal passages, where the air inhaled through their wide nostrils cools the blood before it reaches the cerebral cortex. This internal cooling loop prevents their brain from overheating during high-stress, long-duration stampedes, ensuring that their decision-making centers remain fully operational even when the body is pushed to the absolute edge of physical collapse, setting the stage for a grand migratory matrix that dictates the seasonal balance of power across the continent. As the dry season tightens its grip on the southern plains, baking the fertile volcanic soils into concrete and drying the seasonal waterholes into cracked mud, the wildebeest population activates its grand migratory engine. These animals do not wander aimlessly across the geography. They operate as a highly synchronized, collective superorganism that executes a clockwise loop across thousands of square miles of ecosystem. This movement is not an emotional journey. It is a cold, calculated offensive campaign driven by the absolute necessity of locating clean water and fresh forage. The herd aligns into massive columns stretching from horizon to horizon, creating a dense, moving wall of muscle, bone, and horn that transforms the entire landscape into a fluid tactical grid. The operational dynamics of this massive column are governed by a complex, decentralized intelligence system where no single leader holds absolute control. Instead, the movement is dictated by a collective democratic wave of spatial awareness, where the decisions of small, frontline groups ripple through the entire mass within seconds. When a lead group senses a threat or discovers a water source, their shifting physical vectors send a kinetic signal back through the ranks, causing thousands of trailing animals to seamlessly adjust their speed and direction without ever breaking formation. This decentralized structure ensures that even if predators ambush the front columns, the core mass can instantly bypass the danger zone, maintaining its forward momentum and preserving the structural integrity of the migration. This movement is supported by an ongoing, high-intensity vocal communication network that sounds like continuous, low-pitched grunting roar across the plains. This constant vocal tracking is not random noise. It is a real-time positioning system that prevents individuals from becoming isolated in the dust clouds. Each animal recognizes a distinct acoustic frequency of its family unit, allowing mothers and calves to maintain contact within a roaring crowd of 500,000 individuals. By monitoring the shifting tones of the surrounding vocalizations, the herd can gauge the collective anxiety or calmness of the group, instantly identifying when a section of the line encounters a predator or faces a physical barrier, allowing the collective mass to adapt its defensive posture before the threat can materialize. When the migration forces a herd to cross vast, waterless expanses, they transition into a state of extreme energy conservation, utilizing a steady, low-impact trot that maximizes ground coverage while minimizing caloric burn. They move in single-file lines along ancestral paths carved deep into the soil by generations of their ancestors, reducing friction and avoiding the dangers of unknown terrains. This disciplined movement allows the columns to pierce through territories heavily occupied by stationary, ambush-based predators like prides of lions and clans of hyenas, outpacing the territorial boundaries of their enemies and forcing the predators to either abandon their home ranges or watch a limitless food supply march right past their jaws, setting the structural groundwork for a high-density reproductive window that defies the laws of predatory attrition. Deep within the operational rhythm of the migratory engine lies a high-stakes reproductive strategy known as a synchronized calving crossfire. Unlike other mammalian species that spread their births across months to reduce resource pressure, the wildebeest compresses its entire reproductive cycle into a hyper-condensed 2 to 3 week window at the height of the green season. Within this brief flash of time, hundreds of thousands of pregnant females give birth simultaneously across the short grass plains, flooding the ecosystem with an overwhelming surge of new life. This is not a peaceful moment of domestic renewal. It is a highly calculated, defensive strategy designed to completely overwhelm the local predatory population through sheer, unmanageable volume. The tactical reality of this strategy is built on the concept of predator satiation. By introducing hundreds of thousands of highly vulnerable, easily caught calves into the environment all at once, the wildebeest population creates a massive surplus of meat that far exceeds the maximum daily consuming capacity of every lion, cheetah, hyena, and wild dog in the region. The local predators hunt continuously, killing and eating until they are physically incapacitated by gorging, yet their combined efforts can only scratch the surface of the overwhelming mass of newborns. This biological flood ensures that the vast majority of the calves survive their first, most dangerous weeks of life simply because their enemies have run out of stomach capacity, turning a period of extreme vulnerability into a brilliant triumph of reproductive statistics. To make this strategy work, the newborn wildebeest calf must be engineered for instant, high-velocity survival from the moment it hits the ground. Within a mere 7 to 10 minutes of emerging from the womb, a wildebeest calf can stand on its wobbly legs. Within 20 minutes, it is running alongside its mother, matching her pace and keeping up with the movements of the main herd. There is no time for hiding in tall grass, no period of slow development, and no shelter from the elements. If a calf cannot run within its first half hour of life, it is instantly abandoned by the mother and consumed by the trailing predators. This brutal, unyielding selection process ensures that only the genetically perfect, highest-velocity individuals survive to join the ranks of the migration, reinforcing the stamina of the entire species. This intense developmental sprint is balanced by a fierce, highly focused maternal protection protocol. A wildebeest mother does not leave her calf to forage. She maintains a parallel physical vector with her offspring at all times, keeping her heavy body positioned directly between the calf and any approaching predators. If a cheetah or a lone hyena attempt to isolate the young animal, the mother will break from the herd, lowering her head to present her sharp, curved horns and launching a fearless, aggressive countercharge to drive the predator back. This individual maternal bravery, multiplied across thousands of protective mother-calf pairs operating within the dense shielding matrix of the main herd, creates a moving defensive barrier that shields the next generation of migratory engines as they prepare to face the most terrifying physical crucible on their journey. As the dry season deepens and the green pastures of the southern plains are completely exhausted, the migrating columns face their ultimate physical and tactical test, the crossing of the Mara River. This is not a simple geographical obstacle. It is a terrifying, highly volatile killing zone where the herd must plunge into turbulent, fast-flowing waters lined by vertical mud cliffs and heavily populated by apex aquatic killers. For weeks, the massive columns mass along the banks of the river, their anxiety building as they stare down at the water, their collective instinct holding them back until the sheer physical pressure of thousands of arriving animals behind them pushes the front ranks to the absolute edge of the precipice. The primary execution engine of this river crucible is the Nile crocodile, a prehistoric apex predator that can grow up to 20 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. These giant reptiles gather by the dozens at the ancestral crossing points, waiting patiently for the herd to arrive. They do not hunt with speed. They utilize absolute stealth, submerging their massive bodies completely beneath the muddy, churning water and positioning themselves directly in the path of the crossing columns. As the first panicked wildebeest leaps from the high bank into the river, the water explodes into a chaotic crossfire of snapping jaws and thrashing tails. The crocodiles launch vertical ambush strikes, clamping their crushing jaws onto the legs and throats of the swimming animals, dragging them beneath the surface to drown them in a display of raw, prehistoric violence. Yet, as terrifying as the crocodiles are, the greatest cause of mortality during the river crossing is the chaotic, self-inflicted panic of the herd itself. Once the crossing begins, the movement transforms into an absolute, unstoppable stampede driven by blind survival terror. Thousands of heavy bodies plunge into the water simultaneously, trampling over each other in a desperate bid to reach the opposite bank. If the exit point is a steep, muddy cliff, the frontline animals slip and fall backward into the river, creating a massive, suffocating pile-up of thrashing limbs and crushing bones. The animals behind continue to leap into the chaos, driven forward by the intense pressure of the oncoming column, completely crushing their own species beneath the water, turning the river into a devastating graveyard of drowned and trampled bodies. Despite the horrific losses sustained during these crossings, the river crucible stands as an essential, ecosystem-defining filter that strengthens a collective genetic pool of the species. The weak, the injured, the slow, and the hesitant are systematically eliminated by the river's harsh dynamics, leaving only the strongest, most resilient, and highest velocity individuals to scale the opposite banks and claim the fresh pastures beyond. The bodies left behind in the water provide a massive, life-sustaining pulse of nutrients that feeds thousands of vultures, marabou storks, and aquatic scavengers, proving that the brutal sacrifice of the individual wildebeest is a primary engine that fuels the entire biological infrastructure of the savanna, setting the stage for a grand evolutionary future that will reclaim the changing landscapes of the world. If human civilization were to suffer a sudden, catastrophic collapse, whether triggered by a breakdown of global industrial agricultural networks, an UN-containable failure of automated resource systems, or an environmental event that completely removes human infrastructure from the African continent, the vast fenced borders, tourist roads, and artificial boundaries that currently restrict the wild places would instantly crumble into ruin. The sprawling concrete cities, industrial cattle ranches, and heavy agricultural farmlands will be abandoned to the elements, and the ancient migration routes that were cut off by human expansion would instantly reopen. Across this silent, human-free continent, the wild populations of wildebeest would step forward, deploying their unmatched locomotive endurance and collective herd intelligence to execute an absolute, unprecedented reclamation of the Savanna matrix. Without human cattle ranches to monopolize the premium water sources and overgraze the finest pastures, the natural grasslands of the continent would undergo an explosive, historic recovery. The migrating columns of wildebeest would expand by the millions, their collective pathways carving massive new highways through abandoned cities, broken concrete fences, and empty industrial zones, restoring the ancient migratory loops that defined the African continent for millions of years. The sheer kinetic force of millions of heavy hooves would trample down the encroaching scrublands, turning overgrown wildernesses back into open, hyper-productive short grass plains, single-handedly resetting the botanical architecture of the entire landmass. Their unmatched reproductive velocity and highly evolved predator satiation strategies would allow them to dominate the changing food webs of this new world with absolute authority. Their complex nasal cooling systems and energy-recovering skeletal frames would render them completely untouchable by localized predators, while their ability to transform low-grade grass into high-density protein would turn them into the primary biological currency of the continent. They would stream through the ruins of human civilization like an unstoppable, living river of flesh and bone, their sensitive olfactory systems tracking the scent of rain falling across abandoned agricultural valleys long before any rival species could register the change. Over deep evolutionary timelines, completely freed from human fragmentation and systematic culling, the wildebeest genome will begin to execute a stunning, radical radiation across the changing landscapes of the planet. The ancient, highly adaptive survival software sleeping within their DNA would respond to the countless open ecological niches left behind by extinct grazing species. We could see distinct branches of these creatures evolving into massive, heavily armored tundra-dwelling variants that migrate across the freezing northern steppes, their square muzzles adapted to clear away thick blankets of snow to reach the buried vegetation beneath. Other specialized lineages might optimize their skeletal structure for alpine environments, becoming nimble, mountain-climbing grazers that scale vertical peaks to exploit high-altitude meadows, completely redefining the boundaries of mammalian adaptation. The wildebeest has successfully completed one of the most complex, high-stakes journeys in the history of vertebrate evolution. They conquered the vast dry expanses, mastered the terrifying river crucibles, outmultiplied the most lethal apex predators on Earth, and kept their elite migratory software completely uncorrupted beneath the burning African sun. They never truly belonged to our fenced wildlife reserves or our tourist safari routes. They merely tolerated our artificial boundaries while waiting for the fragile networks of human civilization to collapse under their own weight. As the short-lived structures of humanity inevitably crumble into the dust of the geological record, the magnificent, unstoppable columns of the wildebeest migration will stand victorious over the landscape, unleashing a permanent, synchronized wave of ecological dominance across the vast, wild expanse of completely reclaimed planet. If you want to unearth the deep, hidden evolutionary secrets of the animal kingdom and explore the terrifying biological forces that secretly control the landscapes of our world, make sure to subscribe to the channel, activate all notifications, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on this unstoppable migratory superpower.